managers are in a really tricky spot because what I see happening over and over again is that managers are feeling responsible for changing an employee's performance and for changing their behavior. And that's the job that they think is theirs. And guess what? That's an impossible task. You cannot make another adult do anything that they don't want to do. And I have a 7-year-old. You can't make a kid do anything that they don't want to do.
And I think that's a source of a lot of frustration for managers.
Absolutely, because they feel like the organization has tasked them with improving employee performance, and the way that the structure is set up now, that's what it looks like. I have a performance conversation. My word is the word, and then I'm supposed to change it for the employee. And it's a very codependent system, because what happens is supervisors then stay focused on things that they can't control, and they don't take action on things that they can control. So as a supervisor, I can't make you perform any differently than you are. I can influence you. I can talk to you about it. At the end of the day, it's in your hands as an employee. What I can do is choose what work you're doing on my team. I can choose whether or not you remain on my team. I can maybe even choose whether or not you remain in the organization. Those are my choices as a supervisor. Employees get to choose what they do. They always have and they always will. So when we're honest about that, we can place accountability and responsibility where it belongs. If an employee, if you've had multiple conversations with an employee about performance and it's not changing, then you have choices. They might not be choices that you like, but you have choices. And one of those choices is not, can I make this employee do something? But I think there's one other little piece that makes this an easy trap to fall into, which is, if I'm a leader and I have an employee that's underperforming, I feel like a bad leader.
Well, and they may not be wrong in feeling like they're going to be held accountable, because I do think that like their leadership may also be making them feel like that. Like, are you addressing the issue, and why isn't this happening? And it does. And it's this trickle down of leaders telling you what to do in a very prescriptive way, and the structures reinforce it. It's them not having clear ideas of what the outcome is. And so instead of monitoring and holding accountable based on outcome, they're monitoring based on like process and time in the chair. As long as they're not harming people in the way, and they're getting the job done, and I think those are probably the two big pillars, then that's what you're looking for. They don't have to do it exactly the way that you would do it. And sometimes they do it better than you because they're living in it all the time, and they figure out, like, again, people are hugely creative.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think it's a insecurity. I think it's a lack of confidence as a leader, because when I see leaders who are more confident in their ability, they're not as controlling, frankly. They're able to go, oh, I'm a good, this is not, this doesn't say as much about me being a leader as it would if I thought this was my only measure. And for a lot of leaders, I think that's what it feels like, is the performance of my people is my measure of who I am as a leader. And without more skill and equipment, that feels absolutely true.
I totally see that.
Uh-huh.
I also think you can be a confident individual, but recognize that you're not safe.
Yes. So tell me more about that.
So like a lot of the time I'll see somebody who, it's a leader and they handed a task off and they thought that the handoff was right, and they have the person do the job, and then they wind up with their boss and it gets exposed that it was done badly.
Yeah.
And then like they feel like their job is in jeopardy. Like they are confident in their ability to do it. They know that they know how to do their job, but that level of like delegation and the degree to which that delegation then reflects back on you as a leader, I think that's a major source for like not feeling safe.
I totally agree. And I think I have had many, many conversations with executive teams where executives are not doing performance reviews at all. They're not receiving them for sure. And many, many times they're not even giving them. So they're kind of immune to this normal, typical communication process and feedback. And the farther away people get from actually two-way communication, the more unreasonable that can become, because it's it's at that point an ideal. Like, as an executive, I'm not actually doing this thing that I'm asking you to do. I'm just holding you responsible for figuring that out. And so I think that there's a lot to be said for convincing executives that they're losing performance and they're losing money, frankly, by continuing to use these stale old systems that they have, that they're leaving a lot on the table. And I think typically that's what it takes to convince people to look at making a change. Understandably, because man, if what I'm doing has gotten me to this point where I'm kind of at the top of my game when it comes to my career, I'm not inclined to make a big
Mm.
shift, you know? It's going to be really hard, even if it's true that something different would be better. Where does that put me? I think we start to see more insecurity again. And that's what I've experienced when just working through this with leadership teams, is that at the end of the day, there's just a whole lot of insecurity around, am I a good leader? Am I good at this, or am I still good at this? Because the pace of change is so
Fast.
consistent, fast. And so it's like, well, I was
Intensifying.
good at
Yeah.
this last year, but am I still the best? Am I still good at this? And so I think this insecurity is what feeds a lot of people overly dependent on the process that the organization has to do these things, instead of trying and learning and feeling like that it's something that they could possibly figure out how to do better on their own outside of those processes. So it does, that is such a great point, Cindy, because really the senior leadership sets the tone for the rest of the organization.
Right. And if there's a leader up there who has any instability, it does trickle down and have its own impact. May not it may not be like instability spreads instability, but like that person may just be trying to control too much versus the accountability.
Yeah. I just spoke at a leadership workshop for a fraternity. So it was the youngest group I've worked with
That's
recently.
awesome.
Yeah, it was really great. But someone had a question about, well, so what do I do when I try to push ideas up and they just get shut down or not even responded to? And I said, well, you have to realize where you are and where they are. Where the people that you're talking to have many of the ideas that are in place now were probably theirs, were things that they either supported or put in place. And so it would be really, really hard to hear that something different might work better, or it would be a struggle for any human being to hear that, even if it's the right thing, even if making a change is a good thing. The initial response is going to be hard. And then here you are, brand new in your career. And so, of course, all you want to do is change things because you have nothing to lose. Whenever you come up across a roadblock, why not? Why not push back? Why not try to change? You literally have nothing to lose. You haven't built up decisions and credits and all of the things. So I think also understanding that, executives aren't trying to be difficult. They're really trying to do a really great job, and their perspective becomes much more, the higher up you get in the career, your career, the more protective you become instead of open. And so that's a natural response. I'm still, when I work with teams, exploring how to address that, because it's such a natural thing. But that's where the change really either starts or stops, is, I think, with that group.
I think it's probably good, right? Like, we don't want anything to change that fast. Like, we
Mm-mm.
want there to be enough friction where it causes groups to think about whether or
Absolutely.
not they're going to change. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you can get too much friction, but I think they're like countervening forces that are at play, right? Like the people who created the ideas are and therefore like they're kind of like their baby and don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily want but there's also like the friction of just that there's a lot to do at the top of the organization and limited resources and what do you concentrate on,
Totally.
and that's also very very true, and that's like the stable element, and then you have the people who are coming up who aren't institutionalized by the system yet,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean because it happens to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yes.
and so they can question things that we don't see as the people who have existed in the system, and in questioning those things that we have stopped seeing, there's opportunity to change. Like those are the
Absolutely.
things we don't see are the taken for granted assumptions, and new fresh eyes are likely to see those assumptions and be like, well, why do we have those assumptions and they don't apply today? And so you want those, I think you want those two forces in
Yes.
action, because otherwise we're just changing to the whim of somebody's of an individual.
Absolutely. The friction is beautiful. Where it gets stuck is when there is not openness at the top.
Yeah,
So where
for
it's
sure.
too hard and too structured, or where people
Lack of
don't
humbleness at the top.
lack, maybe, I think it's often just from fear. I think it's
Yeah.
self-preservation more than anything else. And then also sometimes I see people who are coming up feeling like they can't speak, like their voice is shut down, they don't have a channel, they don't have an avenue to express these ideas. I think it's the same thing as being too closed at the top, and I think that's where we get into the trouble. But no, the actual friction is beautiful, because you're absolutely right. It's like this tension of holding plus changing and working through that to see what needs to happen next.